Right, I think we are officially live on YouTube. What's going on, YouTube? It's been a while. Man, I feel like I've been asleep on YouTube live for a very long time. Good to see you guys. We're officially back to kick things off with some Q&A around our HELOC strategy, but also we're going to be talking about what's going on in the economy, how that's impacting everything right now. A lot to unpack there, especially with the headlines that we're seeing right now on the news outlets. So we do want to more so focus on obviously answering questions that you guys may have. Obviously, this is going to be a time where we get to hang out and just unpack answers and things you might still have questions about. And we'd love to help you guys in that manner. So I'm live on Zoom. I got Zoom pulled up here. I got chat pulled up on YouTube. Yeah, Jared, this is actually live. I got Zoom opened up, so I got questions I'm looking at there as well. And then I'm going to try to figure out how to get on Facebook Live as well, because I'm going to try to hit all the platforms and try to get questions coming in all at the same time, which would be pretty cool. So that being said, yes, this is live. Welcome back, guys. We're going to kick things off with some questions that you guys may have. But I do want to hit some headlines and stories that are hitting the news right now. And I think this is just unpacking the last couple of days. I've released a video, I think on Tuesday morning. Yeah, Tuesday morning. And it's about foreclosures going up. And lots have changed even since that video that I released this past Tuesday, right? Literally 2 days ago. And if you haven't watched it, definitely watch it, because I've been looking at some data and tracking some data as far as what's going on in the economy. And foreclosures are slowly starting to come up. The biggest thing right now that we're paying attention to is car repos. The data suggests that right now the car repossessions are on par with that of 2009, 2008 levels, right? And I'm just seeing the headlines now with Wall Street Journal. Stock market rebounds, it evaporates as AI fears resurfaces. So it looks like Dow just swung more than 1,000 points. So it's very interesting what's happening in the economy right now. I think what's been pretty much been hidden as far as the stress in the economy has been hidden by the Magnificent Seven, as I like to say it, the top seven stocks, right? If you were to take them out in terms of measuring the economy and how things are going, underneath kind of the Max 7's growth and what we've seen in the last 12 months, I mean, the Main Street and a lot of the other businesses that are publicly traded, I don't think they're doing as well as it seems. So right now, car repossessions are on track for 3 million repossessed, which is, again, on par with 2009, 2008 numbers. We're seeing credit card delinquencies climb up. And I've talked about in the foreclosure video how we've just hit about $1.1 trillion in total credit card debt, right? But I think what's more alarming is that before 2021, the average credit card rates were typically swing around 14 to 16%, okay? That's most, major bank credit cards that we would see out there. Now, post-2021, right, on to 2025, the average credit card interest rates are anywhere between 21 to 23%. So I would say about 22% on average. And so we've literally seen 40-50% increase in terms of credit card interest cost, and we're at a record high in terms of credit card debt that, we've accumulated over $1.1 trillion. That to me is the recipe for disaster, unfortunately. And we're starting to see the cracks in the economy, and pair that with the 20% increase in cost of living overall, right? I mean, we've all witnessed it. And it's interesting that I look at Wall Street Journal quite a bit, and it's kind of where I get most of my economic news and updates in many cases. But it's interesting that Walmart just reported that they're doing really, really well. Which a lot of times I use things like Walmart or any retail stores that are kind of the more discounted end as a proxy for how the economy is doing well as well. So if you actually look at Walmart and in terms of their sales and revenue, they're picking back up quite a bit. And that news obviously cascaded to Walmart stock prices, the value going up slowly. And so that tells me that the economy right now, a lot of people are strapped. A lot of people are feeling it. A lot of people are tight right now in terms of the wiggle room. And the University of Michigan study they did not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, show that we're at all-time low in terms of, in the last 10 years, I should say. In the last 10 years, we're at pretty much at an all-time low point in terms of consumer sentiment, meaning they're less, willing to take risk, less willing to spend their money, less willing to do discretionary spending. So, we're seeing a market-wide, economic-wide, sentiment and fear, and I think there's people definitely feeling that. So, and if you guys have any questions on that, I would love to unpack some of that even more. Obviously, Jim's asking a question about a HELOC, auto loan balance, $700 in 4th of 60th month term, $5,300 cash flow, car payment. Shall I roll that into a HELOC? So first of all, Jim, it seems like you have a phenomenal cash flow, right? if you have $5,300 cash flow, you're doing really, really well, right? Congratulations, pat yourself on the back. So you have a 6% HELOC, right? Is that okay? That's the balance. So $327,000 balance, 2.99% auto, which you have about $30,000 balance. Okay, so let's actually put this on a whiteboard, and I'm gonna try to do this on YouTube for you guys as well, because I'm using 2 different streaming services to be able to stream. I got Zoom, I got YouTube over here, so I'm looking at different things all at the same time. So I'm gonna try to do this. It might be a little slower. I was having some tech troubles earlier with Zoom not being able to stream to YouTube. Some of you guys may have seen that, but let me go and document your numbers real quick. So I'm gonna share first on Zoom, and then I'm gonna try to share this on, let's see if I can do this. Display capture, yep, okay. All right, so you guys should be able to see the screen, right? Okay, I'm gonna just check with YouTube if you guys can see the screen. Actually, I should just pull up YouTube right here so I can keep an eye on your guys' comments and questions. Okay, there we go. All right, let me see if I can go find the stream. One second, guys. It's a little rusty on the live. It's been a while that I've been on YouTube live. I do a lot of Zooms, obviously. So, okay, you guys can see my screen. Fantastic, awesome. I'm gonna pay attention to the comments. I got my phone out here so I can see the comments as well on top of the screen. So, Jim, for you got a 6% HELOC, right? So 6% HELOC, and the balance is $327,000. Okay, and you have an auto loan at 2.99%, which is pretty cool, right? Really good. So it's an auto loan. Let's go take a look at. Okay, 35,000. Okay. All right, and you have, so that's about $700 a month of payment as a month in terms of monthly payment, and everything. Is that all everything you have, Jim? The HELOC and the auto loan? And I'm guessing your HELOC is a first lien position HELOC. Is that right? So Jim, I'm just asking for a follow-up so that I have a little bit of clarity in terms of what I'm working with. Yeah, if that $327,000 is a first lien HELOC and you have a 2.99% car loan at $35,000 balance, I mean, you got pretty good cash flow, I would say. Okay, so Jim says that's right. Okay, so if I were in your shoes, and again, I'm working with very limited information here, right? I mean, I would love to dig further into some of the other things like your income, expenses. I don't know if we'll necessarily have all the time in the world for us to be able to do that, but I think just looking at your numbers, I would say I mean, let's look at what the calculator says, right? Because my gut says to pay off the auto loan separately, because your interest rate is really low at 3%. I don't know if you'll necessarily see an incremental increase in savings, right? Both for time and interest cost by rolling in the auto loan and its balance over to the first lien position HELOC. So I guess I'll ask you this, Jim. Do you have a sufficient room in your HELOC limit to be able to roll all $35,000 into the HELOC, or no? Because I would like to at least get some, I guess, context and what we're working with, right? Because if you don't have enough of a line of credit limit, then I would say, forget about that, right? Just work towards paying down the auto loan and then work to free up that cash flow, right? Which is $700 a month, and then work towards paying off the first lien position HELOC, right? So if you have sufficient room, then you do have the additional option. So there's immediate pros and cons that I would say by rolling over that $35,000 into the first lien HELOC. The pro is that you're immediately eliminating the $700 a month and frees up your cash flow, right? So it takes you from $5,300 cash flow to essentially $6,000 of cash flow every single month, which is, by the way, very, very good, right? Very good. So it basically allows you to do laser focus just in the first lien HELOC, and really allows you to kind of free up that mental real estate, right? Because I oftentimes work with clients that have like 9 different credit cards, and it's not like big balances, but just having 9 different payments that you're having to deal with definitely takes a toll on your mental capacity and your mental real estate, right? Although your balance may not change, by consolidating the 9 credit cards into one, it just frees up a lot of that mental real estate and bandwidth for you to think clearly. It's less stressful. And oftentimes I like to believe that you tend to make better financial decisions when you're less stressed, right? The higher you're stressed, the higher your cortisol level, right? Your stress hormone, the likelihood that you'll make more of a less wiser decision, I should say, when it comes to your finances. So there's pros. The cons is that this may not apply to you, but if you don't have strong cash flow like you do, Jim, the holding of a balance of an additional $35,000 going from 3% to 6%, again, depending on your cash flow, it could cost you more interest overall, right? Because immediately you're looking at this and going, well, obviously 3% is cheaper than 6%. Therefore, I'm going to end up paying less of an interest. But again, that all depends on the time factor as well. If you can get rid of the auto loan in a matter of months as opposed to a matter of years, that would certainly have minimal damage or minimal interest accumulation on the auto loan being inside of your HELOC, and it might not even matter all that much. So let me go ahead and paint the picture. Okay, so $500,000 HELOC, got it. So let me paint the picture as far as how this could work on a scenario for, if you were to go throw everything in a HELOC. Let me actually go find my calculator here for you guys. I stopped sharing for a sec just so that I could pull up the calculator. There we go. All right. Jim, if you want me to go granular, and I don't know what your last name is, so I hope this works. Are you okay if we actually went deeper and we start looking at your income and expenses? Is that okay with you if we do that? Because I don't want to ask you for, ballpark income numbers and expenses. Sometimes I know we're all weary about putting our information out there on the internet, and I don't necessarily want to have you do certain things that you're not comfortable with. So yeah, so Jim, if you're cool with it, I can go ahead and punch in some numbers here and basically go into, okay, what would this look like if we did throw in the auto loan into the HELOC versus we just paid it off separately, with the cash flow that we do have Let me make sure my calculator is set up properly. There's no errors or anything like that. Okay, there we go. All right, so I'm gonna share my screen with you guys once more. There we go. So I got my calculator pulled up, something that I use quite a bit in all of our videos. Okay, 10,000 income and $4,000 without a car. Jim, I really like your lean and very efficient use of your cash flow or your income, which is good. So let's look into this. So Jim, what's your original balance on your mortgage? And actually, here's what I'm gonna do, or I should say your HELOC. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna share. This might be better just for faster conversation. Let me see if I can get. Let me see if we can do this. Let me go over to. See if I can paste this here. Nope. I'm gonna see if I can try to get you on Zoom, Jim, and see if we can have a faster conversation and dialogue. So give me one sec. I gotta see if this copies over. Nope, it does not. Ah, darn it. Okay. Okay. Let me try this. I'm gonna stop sharing one more time. I'm gonna punch this into this over here. Okay. By the way, if you guys want to jump on the Zoom room, I mean, it's literally gonna be the same thing. If you guys want to jump on the Zoom room, I just put the link in the chat so that you guys can. If you guys would like to jump in the Zoom room instead, that way I can actually put your microphone on. If you want your video turned on, great. That's fine. I have a couple people here on the Zoom room already, but if you want to be on Zoom, so that we can have a faster dialogue, I'm all for it. Okay. But yeah, Jim, $350,000 is your original. Okay. And then right now, going back to the whiteboard, you're at 327. All right. And your first lien HELOC's at 6%. Okay. So if this was technically a mortgage, right? If it was amortized across the next 30 years, this is obviously what you would have paid in terms of your P&I, your principal and interest. And your additional consumer debt, we talked about the auto loan being there for $35,000. Okay. There we go. And let's say the interest rate's at 2.99%. Okay. Oh, we got to actually put this in a whole number. Let me try this. Yeah, it won't let me change that. So I'll stick with 4%. I think that it'll be fine. We'll change this to, let's say, December 1st. So moving into the next closest beginning of the month, just for us to have a clear start. Okay, 4,000. All right, there we go. For your living expenses. So pretty darn good cash flow, right? If we factor in the quote unquote P&I, which you don't have technically because you have a first lien HELOC. With first lien HELOC, it's gonna be interest only, right? So 6%, 327, I believe was your, yeah, okay. So there we go. So what I'm looking at, and for those watching, whether you're live or recording whatnot, just want to let you know that this is not a guarantee. This is not a promise, right? What we're trying to demonstrate here is using a scenario to understand an idea of, is it better to take an auto loan and basically migrate it into the first lien HELOC, right? Consolidating the debt with the first lien HELOC and the auto loan. Would you come out ahead, or would it cost you more interest by combining the two balances, right? That's ultimately what we're trying to get at. So what I'm trying to show you is not a promise, guarantee. It's not something that's going to be applicable universally, but it's unique to Jim's scenario in terms of what I'm seeing. So, so without putting or actually just let me do this. This is going to be cleaner. This is going to be much better. All right. So let's do this, and then we're gonna add back the payment. All right. So you would essentially be done and have this first lien HELOC paid off in approximately 6.1 years. Okay, so January 16, 2032, with your given cash flow, you're gonna save approximately, let's see here, $241,395.21. Pretty darn good, right? At the end of the day, potentially paying just $67,037.47. So pretty darn good, Jim. I mean, I would say, that kind of buys you another house, depending on what state you live in. So pretty good. Now, what does this look like if we then decided to lump in that $35,000 auto loan, right? So I'm gonna save, okay, before consolidation. So I'm just gonna annotate this here so that we know what the results could be without adding the auto loan into the first lien position HELOC, right? So potentially saving $395,021. All right. Okay, now let's go and add or consolidate the auto loan into the first lien HELOC. So I'm going to take that off because the $700 monthly payment will no longer be a factor. We're going to go and add in. All right, this. I'm going to go and add in here. All right, so $35,000 for the car loan. All right, there we go. All right, so you can see here, this is interesting because there's a little bit of trade-off, right? You're actually going to, by taking the auto loan and put it into the first lien position HELOC, you're actually going to save about 2 months. So you're going to be done about 2 months earlier, right? But you're going to save about $5,000 less in interest cost. So it's a give and take, right? In this scenario, I don't know if there is a right answer. It really depends on what you want to optimize for and what's important to you, Jim, right? Do you want time savings, like 2 months? Is that worth it for you? Or do you want that extra interest savings? Now, what's interesting is that if you're done, let's say 2 months earlier, then, say not combining the auto loan, what's interesting is that that's 2 months of loan payment that you would have made, right? Which is, if this was a traditional 30-year amortization mortgage, you would have paid 2 months worth of $2,098.43, right? So you would have had, quote unquote, 2 more months of payments. But because you were done earlier by 2 months, you won't have 2 months of payments, right? That you would have if you don't combine the auto loan and the first lien position HELOC, right? So that's interesting, right? So I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer here, Jim. I don't know. I mean, it really depends on what you want to accomplish at the end of the day. Jared says, don't do it, Jim, right? But again, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I think this is just purely on what do you want to optimize for? Do you want that extra $5,000 of savings, or do you want 2 months of time savings? So a bit of a give and take. So in either direction, Jim, I think you're going to be in a very good shape. I want to compliment you, and I want to say hats off to you for the fact that you're staying lean. You got great cash flow. Not everyone has that kind of cash flow, especially in this current economy right now in the market. In fact, there's data recently that suggests that more and more people are living paycheck to paycheck. And I think that a lot of it has to do with, obviously, we haven't seen a 20% increase in wage in the last 5 years, but we did see 20% increase in cost of living due to factors like what I mentioned, inflation, but you also have credit card interest costs are way high. I think 30 to 40% increase on credit card interest. But we also have auto loans. The default rate for auto loans are incredibly high right now. There's a lot of car repossessions. I mentioned earlier, for some of you guys that tuned in earlier that we're reaching about 3 million car repossessions for this year. And that's on par with that of what we've seen back in 2008, 2009, right, during the Great Recession. So, obviously it's interesting. Let me stop sharing my screen. So I think it's really interesting, a very interesting time right now. So this is kind of what I'm predicting in the next 6 to 12 months. I know there's a lot of people and a lot of chat, a lot of conversation right now about the Federal Reserve not going to cut rates in December. There's a chance for that. I think that even Polymarket and Kalshi, those betting platforms are even suggesting that there's a 63% chance that the Federal Reserve will not cut rates in December of 2025. And if they do cut, it will probably be by another 25 basis point or 0.25%. So I think we're going to, if we don't see a 2.25% interest rate cut in December, I think the Federal Reserve will probably realize what's really going on. And come January, they might actually do a 0.5 or 50 basis point cut. I know, which is kind of aggressive of an opinion. And a lot of you may disagree. But right now, I'm just seeing a lot of these pillars of the economy, and I'm seeing cracks, right? If you have higher credit card default rates, and we're seeing more 30-day lates happening with credit cards, we're seeing car loans going into default, repossession, and foreclosure starts are slowly starting to come back up, right? We're seeing, I think this is the 8th consecutive month where we've seen foreclosure rate starts have increased. And in October 2025, last month, we've seen a 20% increase in year over year numbers. So what that tells me is that a lot of people are right now foregoing their car payments because, well, first, they got to, credit cards and home mortgage payments are important because you got to feed yourself and you got to have a roof over your head. But you can get by without having a car, right? You can always Uber, right? Or get yourself on a Lyft or carpool, whatever the case might be. So I think it's going in layers, right? First layer is the car loans, car loan defaults. We're seeing car repossessions as just as high as 2008, 2009 numbers. So that's going first. I think the next layer of some alarming headlines we're going to see could be credit card default rate will be next. And then when that goes, foreclosures are, obviously going to be the last piece of that action. So, I don't have a crystal ball, or I don't have anything to necessarily substantiate my kind of a aggregate hypothesis. But if you look at the headlines, it's pretty darn clear, right? So, yeah, just looking at, show you my screen, try to do this with my Zoom people too. Okay. So, obviously stock market's starting to feel it. I saw earlier that, here it is. So Americans shoppers are looking for deals and Walmart is cashing in. So this is a great proxy, and it's a good indicative that people are shopping for cheaper prices because of cost of living going up, and they're fighting for it. They're fighting for cheaper prices. So, yeah, guys, I'm seeing signs where, we're definitely taking a hit in terms of the economy. If you look at St. Louis, or Federal Reserve St. Louis numbers for, I'll show you this. I thought this was pretty interesting. Credit card interest rates. All right, this is the part where I saw, I'm like, wow, this is getting quite alarming. So, is this the chart? Yeah, this is the chart. So, I was looking at this earlier this week as part of my bigger research, preparing for the video that I had out on Tuesday. But if you look at this, guys, this is the last 30 years, okay? A little bit over 30 years, like 30 years in 1 month, right? So this chart starts from November 1994, all right? That's actually when Daniel was born. And so we were hovering around that 16, 15, okay, down to about 12, right? This is probably the dot-com bubble. Yeah, this is the dot-com bubble shadow. And then 2007 and 2008 happens. Obviously, the recession kind of sends the interest rates down. Interest rates were pretty much at zero for the federal fund rate. And then it starts to come back up. And it stayed relatively low for a very long time. Okay. And then we started to see interest rates come back up, 2019. And then here is COVID, right? And even through COVID, okay, we really never exceeded that 16% number that seemed to have been kind of the cap for the last 30 years. And then something happens in 2022 where we're just rapidly climbing, right? Interest rates start to go up. The bank's starting to price in risks, right? Basically, what that means is that the banks are trying to get ahead in terms of inflation and interest cost. So this is probably what prompted the increase on the overall credit card interest rate. So if you look at now, 2025, right, the latest data we have is August 2025, we're hovering around 21.39% in terms of credit cards. And we have never been on that rate for the last 30 years. Okay. So this gives you an idea as to why we're feeling that crunch. Okay, not only is it more expensive to use a credit card and to hold a balance, but we have cost of living, cost of goods, and inflation that inflated a lot of the expenses, right, the last 2-3 years, and things are a lot more expensive. So not only is it more expensive to buy stuff from the grocery stores, but it's more expensive to hold a balance if you don't pay off your mortgage or pay off your credit card and the statement balance every single month. And I think this is going to lead to some interesting squeeze, and we're already seeing it with car repossessions. If we're going to go down that road, car repossession rates. So, yeah, here we are. We go over the news. There we go. Okay, I would say Yahoo Finance is pretty credible. So, yeah, car repossessions expected to hit their highest rate since 2009 recession. Is it a sign the economy is in trouble? Okay. What do you guys think? How many of you guys are, and it doesn't have to be you, okay, if you guys don't want to share, but how many of you guys know a family member or friend that's definitely in the struggle mode? Like, they're having to do some little bit of work in terms of buying the groceries and buying gas and putting food on the table. So I'm curious, right? So I'm just reading some of the comments, guys. I'm gonna stop sharing my video. There we go. Okay, I'm looking. Some of you guys are talking about IULs in the chat. You guys are hilarious. I see what you're saying. 2 months saves $12,000 in payments. Let's see, just a signature on the blank piece of paper is payment. Number 30. Yeah, I'm just reading your guys' comments on YouTube, as well as, and Dave, I see your question, so I'll get to you in just one sec. Okay. All right. Ballas Dam 5419 is saying, am I on the right track? Mortgage loan 40 months ago for $200,000. So you had a 20-year mortgage, 5.95%. I refinanced 8 months ago at 4.99% of the total of $349,000 today, $65,000 plus $25,000 interest left. I have a line of credit at $9,000, 14%, and credit card 15,000, 25%. I would pay off that credit card, man. I would get rid of that ASAP. I was just showing you the chart, right? I would get rid of that first. A lot of times with our clients, what we tend to do is we eliminate a lot of the credit cards first, right? Because not only do they cost the most amount to just hold that balance, but they suck away your cash flow. So it's just better to get rid of the credit card first, because it achieves two things, right? Helps alleviate the cash flow, helps alleviate cash flow, but also just cost of holding that credit card balance is just expensive. So I would get rid of the credit card for sure, and then come back to work on your mortgage, because it sounds like if you really only have $25,000 of interest left to go on your amortization schedule, that doesn't seem like a whole lot left over. So I would say if I were to give you like a prioritization audit, if that's what we're going to call it, I would more so go with paying off the credit card first and then finish paying off the mortgage using the line of credit. That's what I would do. I mean, I would need to know a more grander context as to what you're working with. But that's just, that's my take on it. Okay. Does that help? Ballast Dan, I hope so. I have no debt. It's the credit card limit. Oh, okay, it's the credit card limit. It helped me pay, and I'm putting it back on the 25th. Okay, got it. Yeah, okay. No, thanks for the clarity. I was gonna say, like, you have $25,000 in your credit card or whatever. Yeah, what was the balance? Yeah, that's the limit, right? $15,000. So yeah, I was gonna say $15,000 at 25% interest. I'm like, man, like, just get rid of that. But no, I appreciate the clarity. That helps a lot. Are you using the credit card for everyday expenses and then just paying off the statement balance? Is that what you're doing? I mean, I would, if especially if the credit card gives you points, cashback, rewards. Those are, I feel like those are underrated. I know some people don't like credit cards at all, period. And I get it, I get why, but it's not necessarily a problem with the credit card. It's more so a problem. It's more of a discipline problem than a credit card problem. Yes, I use the line of credit and credit card to pay out. Okay, yeah, I would continue to do that. Use the credit card to pay for all your everyday expenses, groceries, gas, food, you name it. Your everyday shopping. Get those points, get those mileages. I mean, it is so. I don't want to use the word foolish, but I really do think it's no brainer to not, I think it really isn't no brainer to use a credit card. I mean, it gives you fraudulent protection, right? If you ever buy something and it turned out to be fraud, then you can always do a chargeback and potentially get your money back. Gives you points, gives you all kinds of benefits. So I really don't see a reason why you shouldn't use a credit card, especially if you already have positive cash flow, you're disciplined, you're budgeting. I would say keep going, man. I mean, Jared. I mean, it's the same argument as, like, not to make this into a political talk, but it's the same conversation around firearms, right? Like, firearms themselves don't kill people, right? People with firearms kill people, right? It's, and so it's the same argument. Okay, credit cards don't just walk off the table and leave your wallet and go to a nearby mall and spend the money on its own. It doesn't do that, right? You have to physically take the credit card out and tap or swipe to spend the money. So, man, I don't know why some people are anti-credit card, and I get why, but it's not about the credit card. It's just about the person's ability to manage their funds the way that they should be, with proper budget, proper cash flow, right? Yeah. Dave, let me go to you because I feel like I'm neglecting you. So check my math. HELOC interest as 7.25% divided by 360 days, which is 0.02% per day. Daily interest is then 0.0002 times the HELOC balance. Yes, that is the math. So it's rare to see 360 days. Most residential HELOCs use 365 days. 360 days is more common with commercial loans. So if you go borrow money for businesses or you do a commercial loan, then 360 days is more applicable. But most HELOCs use 365 days to calculate the daily interest rate. So the daily rate times the daily balance, and that gives you the daily interest cost, right? So what kind of interest rates are being booked on HELOCs? I want to get rid of my investor rate, interest, and credit cards. So right now, I think most HELOCs are hovering around low 6s to 6.5, depending on the rate that it uses for the index. So it could be SOFR, or it could be prime plus, 1.5% usually. Yeah, and also depends on if you're doing a second lien position HELOC versus a first lien position HELOC. So with first lien position HELOCs, you'll typically get something that's very comparable to, a 30-year conventional mortgage. So, they're not going to be exactly the same, but if you go shop around for a first lien HELOC, you'll notice that the interest rates can be very comparable to that of, your typical traditional 30-year mortgage. Second lien position HELOCs are naturally, you're going to see higher interest rates than your typical 30-year and your first lien HELOC position. A lot of times because it has to do with risk for the banks, and for the HELOC being in second lien position. If there's ever a foreclosure or bankruptcy, anytime a bank holds a second lien anything, okay, it could be a second lien equity loan, a second lien mortgage, doesn't matter. Being a second lien means that you're second in priority in terms of getting the liquidated money back. So if you guys understand how foreclosures and bankruptcies typically work, is that in a foreclosure scenario, the bank obviously repossesses the property, right? Takes, control or possession, right? And what they'll try to do is they'll sell the property, and there's a specific order as to who gets paid out of that liquidation. So bank takes possession of the property because, foreclosure, right? That's the whole point of it. And the bank will try to sell it. So banks have asset management department, or they have asset disposition departments. And their whole job is to take the properties back and put it back on the market, sell it, and obviously recover the funds as much as possible. And a lot of time what ends up happening is whether it goes into an auction, or it sells in the market, or it's an REO, a lot of times these banks oftentimes will sell the property a lot of times less for what they're worth, or less for what they, obviously what the borrower had in terms of the principal balance. So what ends up happening is that when the bank finally sells the property, right, disposes the property, they get the funds, right, the liquidated funds, and there's an order. So first they pay the, it's always the government, right? They always pays the taxes. So if there's any IRS tax liens, right, they get the money first. If there's any property tax liens, that's next. There's an order, and then it's your first lien mortgage, right? So whichever bank holds the first lien mortgage then gets paid. And if there's anything left over, then it's subsequent, right? Second lien HELOC or second lien mortgage, and then it goes into other liens, such as a mechanics lien or other types of liens that are subordinate to some of the more important like government and bank entities. So so I explain all that as a context to show a lot of times being in second lien means more risk, or there's a chance that the bank giving you a second lien HELOC may not be able to recoup the losses in case if you do foreclose or go bankrupt. So they'll price in the additional premium, higher interest costs basically, as a way to compensate for the fact that there's always a chance that if you do foreclose or go bankrupt, that the bank offering the second lien HELOC may not be able to recoup all their money. Hence why the interest rate's almost always higher on a second lien. Obviously, there are times where they'll give you a promo rate. So second lien HELOC banks will give you like a 2 years or 3-year promo rate where the interest rate's much lower at like 4 or 5%, and then afterwards it'll be 7 or 8. That could still work, but just do know that right now most first lien HELOCs are going to be comparable to your first lien mortgages, low 6, 6.5. Depending on the state, you might be even in the upper fives. Okay, 5.8, 5.9. For second liens, I would typically see upper sixes, lower sevens. That's typically where we're at. But by next year, we're hoping to see that number even go down further as the Federal Reserve interest rates go down. The overnight borrowing rates for these banks, that goes down, and that should help kind of cool off some of the interest rate costs for not only HELOCs, but also mortgages as well. Okay. All right, let's go take a look at. All right. All right. Okay. Let's see another question. It's a bit trying to distract us. Oh, it's a bot trying to get it. Oh, you guys think 517 is a bot? Possibly. I mean, it might be a Terminator. sent by the World Economic Forum. All right, let me see if I have any other questions here. In Western New York, most HELOC rates are 8.5, but I did just find one at 7.5. Yeah, they are coming down, guys. Yeah, I mean, last year was a completely different story. I mean, last year we've seen 8s and 9s pretty high, right? So this year we're starting to see them come down. So yeah, for sure. Let's see here. Okay, I'm buying a house in 7 months and the only debt is car and current house. Yeah, Todd, did you have any questions on that? I mean, we're happy to expound on any questions that you may have. I'm just trying to see if I missed any questions from you, which I don't think I did, Todd. So let me know if you have any questions. All right. Okay. Dave says, thanks. Close enough. Obtaining a $75,000 HELOC at 7.25 to work down a RV loan. $68,000 balance at 8.99. With velocity, I could add to the HELOC and amount from savings. That could reduce the interest expense as I see the math. Yeah, I mean, right there is an obvious one. If you have an RV loan of pretty much, let's say 9%, and you have a HELOC at 7.25%, that spread alone, right? The difference between the 7.25 and the 9 or 8.99, that alone is going to save you money regardless, right? You don't even have to do the accelerated payoff strategy, right? And you'll still save money as long as you're actively paying down the principal, because that's the key. But yeah, if you're actively using the accelerated payoff strategy, right? You're dumping all of your income into the line of credit, you're lowering the average daily balance as much as possible, and working towards lowering the cost, that is going to, yeah, that sure can help you accelerate the savings even more aggressively. So yeah, for sure. I think that's kind of a no-brainer situation for sure. Karen says, so what kind of credit scores are first position HELOCs looking for? We sold a house, an RV, and a truck. Now my scores were trashed with the closed accounts. So typically, the lowest I've seen right now is 640. The challenge is when you get lower in terms of your FICO scores, the more they're going to be stringent in other areas in terms of, your financial well-being. So if you're, let's say, hypothetically speaking, and I'm not saying this is your credit score, Karen, but let's say your credit score was closer to that 640, the lowest I've seen that banks, willing to do a HELOC. What I've seen is that the banks can get very stringent in other aspects of the underwriting. So they're going to get stringent on your income. They're going to get stringent on if you have any self-employed income. They're going to be more, more strict about that. They are going to be stringent on LTV or loan to value. So you might have a less LTV situation, right? So it might be closer to like 75% LTV as opposed to a 90% LTV loan to value, right? They might charge a higher interest rate, right? Because of a lower credit score. That might equate to higher perceived risk as a lender and borrower relationship. So could you do some pre-work to help the credit situation? I think you could, maybe you can come back to try to recover some of your credit a little bit. It's gonna take some time. It's not an overnight thing, but the easiest things you could do, right, in terms of your credit, easy but not guaranteed, right, are lowering your credit utilization rate. Okay, that's one of the big things I see a lot of our clients. If they improve that, we do tend to see credit improve quicker, right? Not overnight, but it happens over a period of time, right? Obviously, actually having history helps, right? Don't ever close credit card accounts, right? That's gonna hit your overall credit age and negatively impact your credit age overall. So don't ever close, credit card accounts. What I like to do is that banks do send courtesy notices every 2 years or so. They're going to say, hey, if you don't use your credit card by XYZ date, we're going to close your account. So please use it. So what I do is when I get those email, I would, go buy, gas or candy bar or whatever from the local gas station, whatever I need, right? Sometimes I do need candy bars. Okay. I usually oppose eating sugar, but let's say I do, right? And I just use it for like a $5 transaction just to show it's some activity to keep the credit card going. Is it inconvenient? Yeah, but I'm only doing it, once every 2 years. So, if you really want to optimize for better credit, just overall, that's what I would do. But yeah, Karen, you could always do some pre-work to improve your credit a little bit. Work on your credit for maybe a couple months and get you in a position where you could be in a prime, situation, 720 or better. That typically will get you, good rates and good programs. So if that's what's needed for less stringent underwriting, but also maybe competitive rate, then that might be the route you go. So it really depends on where you are now. I mean, if you're closer to that 640 number, then I would explore doing some pre-credit improvement work. If you're like closer to 700, like 680, 690, maybe I wouldn't worry as much. You also have to think about the fact that when banks pull credit, they don't use FICO 8, FICO 9, or FICO 7. They use FICO 2 most of the times. So that's a different scoring model that banks use when it comes to HELOCs and mortgages. So what I would do also before walking into a bank or applying, I would check your FICO 2 scores. There are credit monitoring companies that you can sign up, $30 or $1 sometimes for a trial, and you can get a FICO 2 score on your current credit and see what that is. I've seen from case to case and time to time where the person thought their FICO score was like 680, 690, right? FICO 7, FICO 8 type of model. But when they went and checked their FICO 2 score, it was actually like 750, right? So that can vary quite a bit. I've seen it. Many cases I would see, FICO 2 and FICO 9 kind of, very similar. But I have seen that discrepancy or this wide gap where what you thought was, what your credit score, what you thought was like 680, 690, if you check FICO 2, it could be much higher, or it could actually work the other way. It could actually be lower. So definitely check your credit score. But wherever you are, right, in terms of your FICO score, you should always be looking at improving your credit, maintain your credit really well. Make sure you keep your credit utilization rate low, right? Below 30% is typically what I personally recommend. Always keep your credit cards open, right? But don't use it, kind of thing, right? Preferably less than 4 credit inquiries a year. So these practices that you apply and implement can certainly help you improve your credit over time and keep it, keep it healthy as long as possible. Okay. All right. All right. Okay, so let's go and see if I have any other. None of you have heard of Payment Canada Rule H6. Yeah, I don't live in Canada, buddy. So I wouldn't know anything about it. I live in the best country in the world, the United States of America. So yeah, I don't know anything about Canadian rules. Sorry, I know there's a lot of nice people in Canada, but you know, I don't know anything about it. Okay. Karen says, yep, credit card utilization, but over 7 years ago, no late payments on anything. Appraised value is $411,000 and loan balance is $267,000. Yeah, I think you're in a pretty good position. You know, if you have no late payments, great. I mean, that's the biggest thing, right? 35% of your FICO score is rated on your on-time payment history. Even if you do have a late payment, you know, if it's like 3 years old and you haven't had a late payment since, sometimes banks may overlook it or they won't even count it. So yeah, I mean, don't beat yourself up over if you do have a late payment, you know, from 6 years ago, right? Okay. All right, guys, we're almost at the top of the hour. I'd love to address any more questions you guys may have. I do see Greg Barker's asking, first mortgage, $290,000 at 3.75%. Original balance at $350,000. 8 years into the 30-year loan. HELOC at 7.3%. $270,000 limit. I'm guessing $15,000 balance with no other debt. Any thoughts? So let's go in and punch that in, Greg, if you don't mind. Greg, if you don't mind sharing your income, expense, ballpark figures, right? Or if you want to jump in my Zoom room, which you know, we can actually have a chat if you like. That's another way of doing it. I'll leave the Zoom room in the chat. There we go. Yeah, so Greg, I can run the scenario for you on our Excel calculator and see if it makes sense for you. I wish I had a built-in, you know, calculator in my head. I know some of you guys are saying, well, you're Asian, you should have that feature in your brain. You are the calculator, Sam, right? No, I unfortunately not. As much as I like to think I'm good with numbers, I do rely on tools, you know, from time to time. Yeah. So, yeah, Greg, if you want to jump in my Zoom room, or if you want to share your ballpark income and expense so that I know your cash flow, that will greatly help me to figure out if this is going to make sense for you or not. Okay. Is an all-in-one a good option for carrying almost a full balance on a new home? So a couple of months ago, Todd, I made a video cautioning against the all-in-one loan. Not that it's a bad thing. You know, don't get me wrong. I think the all-in-one loan is great. The caution is that right now in a higher interest rate environment, if you have a 4% or 3% interest on your mortgage, it really makes no sense whatsoever to switch it into an all-in loan, because of what ends up happening is that if you keep the balance relatively high at a higher interest cost or higher interest rate, and you let the balance accrue over a long period of time, you're definitely going to pay more interest than your 30-year 3% interest rate. You just will, okay? Even if you are dumping all of your income in there, lowering the average daily balance, just by the sheer fact that high balance, long period of time, longer accrual, it's just going to, you know, cook up more interest essentially. So right now in this current environment, if you have a 3 or 4% fixed rate mortgage, a smaller chunk, like a $10,000, $15,000 from a second lien position HELOC, even at a higher rate, could make better sense and may actually save you more interest cost, you know, doing it the accelerated payoff way. So right now, the all-in loan may not make sense. If you are buying a brand new home, then it might, because you really, you know, you're not really starting out at a place where you already had a 3%, 4% fixed rate mortgage. But if you've never owned a home, this is your, you know, first time buying a house, then yeah, I would say the all-in loan is a great way to get started. and the interest rate's pretty comparable to a 30-year mortgage anyways. So if you're going to get a mortgage, if you're going to get a loan or financing to purchase a home, you might as well just, start with a tool that allows you to rapidly pay off your home, but also access the equity when you need it. Because I don't know how many of you guys know what's going on right now, but there's like crazy ton of layoffs happening right now, like a ton. It's insane. Like Verizon, they talked about laying off 14,000 people. Now it's like 13,000 people. Amazon, UPS, Nestle, Microsoft, right? All these companies in the period of 6 months, they laid off thousands of people. And the amount of people that don't have income security, it's wild to me. So you guys probably heard me share this story a lot, where during the pandemic, I had a teacher client, she was furloughed for 3 months, and because she had a HELOC or access to her equity, she was at least able to maintain some level of her living, right? So still being able to pay her bills, putting food on the table, gas in the car, clothes in the back, right? She was able to do all the minimal things that she needed to do because she had her HELOC, but she didn't have any income for the 3 months. So she was at least able to, stay afloat and not get into any scenario that could have, led to a foreclosure or late payments on her credit or getting her utilities shut down, whatever the case might be. Although we did have the foreclosure moratorium, or forbearance, I should say, it still would not have put her in the best position, right? Compared to having some safety net in case of those things happen. So the way that I think, the way that the economy is going right now, I think there's definitely going to be more layoffs. It will continue, unfortunately. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, and I'm not here to scare people off, but I think we're going to see more. We're going to see more layoffs as companies realize that they can stay thin, and with AI, per the productivity per employee, obviously there's capacity there for it to be improved. So yeah, guys, it's happening. So having a HELOC definitely could give you an extra, layer of protection, I would say, in terms of your income and needs that has never been more important, especially now. So yeah, so if an all-in-one loan is maybe not a great option, should I use savings as revolving credit then? Well, the whole idea as to why we like using a HELOC is that if you're in debt, right? If you're in debt already, might as well use a better tool to help you pay it off faster, right? That's the whole premise of the strategy, right? So instead of shelling out cash, right, to pay off your debt, which I'm not opposed to it whatsoever. That will help you pay off your debt and mortgage faster. It'll definitely save you money by just using your cash to do it. But my whole entire premise around the strategy, accelerated payoff, is, well, if you're in debt, might as well just use a tool that gets you, much farther ahead in terms of what you could potentially save in terms of money and time. Okay. All right. We will be buying a new house in May, looking at 5% and VA eligible. FICO is about 830. Yeah, my only debt is car and a mortgage. So if you're looking for a VA, unfortunately, there is no VA version of, a HELOC or an all-in-one loan. What you might be able to do, with your FICO score, and depending on your cash flow and how bankable you are, you might be able to do a VA loan, but use a personal line of credit, right? A PLOC as opposed to a home equity line of credit, if you really do want to pursue this strategy and be able to pay off your mortgage faster. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents if you were to go down that route. Okay. All right, guys. I think we're going to close this out. Okay, we're going to be back here next Thursday. So every Thursdays at 2 p.m. All the way to Christmas, I'll be going live on YouTube, sharing any financial news, economy update, market insight as to what's happening. I'm not an expert in stocks, or I'm not an expert, but I would say I'm an expert in real estate, because that's all I've been doing for the last 10 years. So I'd be more than happy to share my insight there in that in that industry, in that topic. But I'd be more than happy to discuss topics around budgeting, saving money, credit, paying off your debt, little bit of insurance. Sure, we talk a little bit about that, Jared. Yeah, we'll be doing it every Thursday. Yeah, next Thursday we'll probably take a hiatus because it is Thanksgiving. So we won't be doing one next week, but we will certainly do one the following on December 4th. But if you guys enjoy this, I do this, for our clients, we do this all the time. We hang out, talk about finance, answer questions, provide valuable insight, and just exchange ideas. I think that's another thing that I get out of this, which is great. Yeah. Greg's asking, what's your thought on the banks tightening up on HELOCs and calling them up? Is there a time where you should pull up some out ahead of that plan happening? So, Greg, what you're referring to is obviously HELOCs getting shut down, frozen, right? Banks curtailing, right? I think it's a better choice of word for HELOCs getting cut. I really do believe what happened in 2008 through 2012 was a unique event as to what happened to the HELOC. So if you guys remember, back in 2008 through 2012, we did see a lot of HELOCs get shut down, frozen, cut, right? All the bad things that could have happened. I believe that was a one-off event, and very rare one-off event, because of the leading up to that moment story, right? Because if you remember, with these ninja loans, right? No job, no income, right? If you were breathing, if you had a heartbeat, you essentially got a loan. And even if you were a subprime borrower, right? You were able to get a mortgage, right? With an adjustable rate mortgage. It was wild, wild west. Everyone could buy a home, and that's the primary driver as to why, we saw a lot of the homes appreciate very, very quickly. But what the banks were also doing, it was very aggressive. What they were doing is they were not only lending at 100% mortgages, right? No money down, right? It was 100% financing. If the price of the home was $300,000, the bank was financing $300,000, right? The entire thing. But what they were also doing is they were, on top of the 100% financing, they would tack on an additional 20% as a HELOC. So technically, the $300,000 home now has $300,000 mortgage and a $60,000 HELOC, right? So it's over leverage, right? It's already over in terms of the debt to the value ratio, right? Loan to value ratio was at 120%. So what was happening is that as the value of real estate quickly collapsed, right? What was once a $300,000 home is now like $200,000, but the borrower is still at $350,000 loan. Well, what are the banks going to do? Obviously, they're going to shut down that HELOC because the value of the asset that is the collateral, right? The underlying asset is worth much less than what the borrower owes, right? Completely underwater. So it made total sense for banks to go and say, yeah, we're not going to let people borrow more, right? Like, are we kidding, right? So the banks shut down and froze HELOCs for that reason. And so we don't see that a whole lot anymore. We don't see 120% loans. We don't see that anymore. Banks have gotten more conservative in terms of their lending practices. Ever since Dodd-Frank Act of 2012, we have the Truth in Lending Act, right? Regulation Z. There's a lot more of a security and a process in which that banks can't give you 120% mortgage or a HELOC. That just doesn't happen anymore. With also the idea of accelerated payoff, right? Using a HELOC to pay off your mortgage faster. The idea is to eliminate our debt, right? The idea is to eliminate our mortgage as opposed to, accumulating more debt. The problem with 2008 through 2012 was that people thought the real estate market was going to just keep going, right? It was like to the moon before that term even was a thing. Everyone thought that real estate was going to go to the moon, right? A $300,000 home was going to be a $500,000 and then $1 million. It just keeps going. That's the fallacy that a lot of people had. So what they were doing with the HELOC was a completely different thing. They were buying boats. They were remodeling. They were using that money to go to Vegas. They were using that for another down payment, right? there were a lot of dumb and stupid things that were happening with the HELOC. So as long as you're not using the HELOC to go to Vegas and spend it all on a roulette table, right? And you're using it wisely towards A, paying off your debt, right? Paying off your mortgage as fast as possible, and B, using it as a leverage to buy other income producing asset, an appreciable asset. I think you're going to be in a better spot than most people that would probably use the HELOC, in a non-smart way. So I think you're going to be fine, Greg, or Todd, right? Yeah, Todd and Greg. I'm seeing both of you guys kind of bring the same thing. Yeah, some people gambled that equity would outpace interest, and that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. Everyone thought that the property and the value of the property is just going to keep going, and then we all knew what happened, right? So, yeah, guys, I don't think that's going to repeat in that exact same fashion. Do I believe that real estate prices will come down? Sure. Everything is kind of on a cyclical basis. But I don't think we're going to see the same kind of magnitude of what happened to HELOCs back in 2008 and 2012 as we do, as we're seeing now. I don't think we're going to have that same issue. What I am fearful of, or I should say concerned about, is credit cards. There's a lot of abuse in credit cards right now. Credit cards have been very accessible in the last 10 years, even at subprime. So, yeah, so if you guys want to schedule 101, Todd's asking for it. So this is the link, acceleratorstrategies.com/consulting. So if you guys go to that link, you guys can schedule a one-on-one call with our team of experts. They're all mini-me's, okay? They're all great at what they do. I taught them everything I know about finance, and they themselves have their expertise as well. So schedule a call and let's chat and see how we can help you not only pay off your mortgage faster, pay off your debt faster, but I think just building a strong foundation for really whatever you want to do. If you want to invest in real estate, you want to invest in crypto, you want to invest in stock, ETF, mutual funds, precious metals, whatever floats your boat, right? Or if you want to get into insurance, buying some indexed universal life or whole life, if you're into that, whatever you do, I think the fundamental things you should be able to do in any capacity to carry out whatever financial strategies that you want to carry out, you should at minimum be able to control your cash flow, budget, know what levers to pull when it comes to improving your credit, and also paying down your debt as a form of de-risking your finances overall. Okay? So, yeah, guys. So we'll wrap it up. I know we went a little bit over. I know some of you guys have some questions, and I want to make sure we get into it. So next week, we won't be doing live because it's Thanksgiving. I may pull it up to do it on a Wednesday, maybe, perhaps. So we might do it on Wednesday. We'll see. Yeah, if you guys want me to do it on Wednesday, I'll do it on Wednesday. I'm happy to answer questions and hang out with you guys and spend some time. And who knows, we might have to do an emergency live stream, knowing how the economy looks like right now. So, yeah, we'll definitely look into that. All right, guys, we'll wrap it up. Have a great week, guys. I sincerely mean it. I'm thankful for you, thankful for all of you guys tuning in, whether you're watching the live or recording. We'll be doing these on a weekly basis. And then over time, we're going to slowly morph this this weekly live stream that we're going to be doing into more of a show format. So you're going to see Daniel back here again, back in our main studio. And, we'll get into other topics that some of you guys may have been around for that, back in the day, 2 years ago. So we'll definitely be bringing back some topics that I know a lot of you guys are interested in. So yeah, for sure. All right, cool, guys. Love it. If I didn't answer your question, I apologize. Feel free to reach out, schedule a call. We'd love to serve you in any way possible. All right. Okay. We'll wrap it up. I'll see you guys next week. Have a great week. If I don't see you, Have a great Thanksgiving. Thankful for